Two ancient humans are sitting very close to each other. This is not unusual. Personal space in the ancient world operated on entirely different parameters than it does in the modern world. When you live in a group of 15 to 20 people, sharing a shelter, sleeping within arm's reach of multiple other bodies, spending virtually every waking hour within a few meters of the same small set of individuals, the physical boundaries that modern urbanites maintain around themselves as a matter of psychological necessity simply do not develop in the same way. Proximity is the default state of ancient social life. But this proximity is different. It is chosen rather than circumstantial. These two people are oriented toward each other in a way that has nothing to do with a shared task or a shared threat. Their faces are close. Very close. Closer than any practical activity would require. And then, in a gesture that is either the most natural thing in the world or one of the stranger behaviors that a visiting alien zoologist would document about this particular species, their lips meet. Now here's the question I want you to hold. Was that a kiss? Not in the legalistic sense. Obviously their lips touched. The question is whether that lip contact was expressing what a modern human kiss expresses. Affection, desire, pair bond reinforcement, intimacy. Or whether it was something else entirely, a different behavior that happens to involve the same anatomy, motivated by different psychology and carrying different social meaning. Because the history of kissing is not as straightforward as it seems, the question of when ancient humans first kissed is not just a biology question or a behavior question. It is a question about the evolution of human intimacy itself, about when and why our species developed the specific suite of behaviors we associate with romantic and social affection, and what those behaviors tell us about the kind of social and emotional lives ancient humans were living. And the answer, when you dig into the evidence, the primatology, the genetics, the neuroscience, the ancient textual record, the cross-cultural anthropology, is considerably more fascinating and considerably more ancient than the recent headlines about kissing might suggest. Let's start with the biology because the lips are not neutral anatomy. Human lips are uniquely structured among all primates. They are everted, turned outward in a way that exposes the mucosal tissue that in other primates is tucked inward and not externally visible. This gives human lips their characteristic appearance. Visible, prominent, richly innervated with sensory nerve endings, and highly vascular, meaning they flush with blood in response to arousal and emotional states in ways that are visually perceptible. The density of sensory nerve endings in the lips is extraordinary. The lips are among the most sensitive areas of the human body, rivaling the fingertips in their concentration of tactile receptors. When two lips meet, the neural signal generated is substantial, carried through branches of the trigeminal nerve, one of the largest cranial nerves, directly to brain regions involved in sensory processing and emotional response. Why do human lips have this configuration? The most widely accepted explanation involves the combination of infant feeding and sexual signaling. Everted lips facilitate breastfeeding in human infants. The specific latch mechanics of human nursing differ from those of other primates partly because of lip anatomy. But everted, richly vascularized lips also function as honest signals of health and arousal. Their color, fullness, and moisture status all carry information about the individual's physiological state that other primates cannot broadcast in the same way. This is the anatomical foundation for kissing. Human lips are structured in their eversion, their innervation, their vascularity, in ways that make lip contact both informationally rich and neurologically significant. You are not just touching skin when you kiss, you are triggering one of the highest density sensory interfaces on the human body, generating a neural response that cascades into the limbic system, the reward circuits, the systems that process social bonding and emotional attachment. The question of when ancient humans started kissing is partly the question of when this anatomical configuration was in place, and when the neural systems that make lip contact rewarding were fully developed. And the answer to that is, they were in place in fully modern form in the earliest anatomically modern Homo sapiens, and probably in ancestral forms in earlier Homo species. Let's talk about what kissing actually does neurochemically, because this is where the behavior becomes clearly adaptive rather than arbitrary. A romantic kiss triggers a cascade of neurochemical events that reads like a pharmacological intervention. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released, strengthening feelings of attachment and trust between the individuals involved. Dopamine is released through the mesolimbic reward pathway, generating the pleasurable sensation that makes the behavior self-reinforcing. Serotonin levels are affected. Cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases. The physiological state produced by kissing is one of reduced stress, increased bonding, increased reward, and heightened positive arousal. This is not a random outcome. This is a neurochemical profile specifically associated with pair bond formation and maintenance. Oxytocin is the same compound released during sexual activity, during childbirth, during breastfeeding. It is the body's primary social bonding mechanism, deployed across the range of activities that form and maintain the close relationships that human social life depends on. It's released during kissing places kissing squarely in the category of pair bond reinforcing behaviors, alongside sexual activity and parental care. In the context of ancient human reproduction and social organization, pair bond reinforcement is survival critical. We have established in other discussions that human reproduction requires sustained pair bonds, sustained enough to support the extraordinarily long dependency period of human children, a behavior that neurochemically reinforces pair bonds that makes the participants feel more attached, more trusting, more positively associated with each other. That behavior is not a luxury or an aesthetic preference. It is social technology in the service of the most important survival function our species has. Ancient humans who kissed maintained stronger pair bonds. Ancient humans with stronger pair bonds raised more children to adulthood. The genetics of kissing, or more precisely, the genetics of the neurological systems that make kissing rewarding, were positively selected for across the deep time of ancient human evolution. Now let's address something that has generated a lot of recent headlines, because the media coverage of this topic has been both interesting and somewhat misleading. In 2023, a paper published in the journal Science Advances argued that the earliest written evidence for romantic kissing predates the previously accepted date, pushing it back to at least 4,500 years ago in ancient Mesopotamian and Indian texts, rather than the approximately 3,500-year date that had been most cited previously. The paper also challenged the claim that kissing was invented in South Asia and diffused outward, arguing instead that it appeared in multiple ancient civilizations independently, suggesting it was a widespread human behavior rather than a cultural invention that spread through contact. This is genuinely interesting historical scholarship. But here's what the headlines missed. The absence of written evidence for kissing before 4,500 years ago does not mean kissing didn't happen before 4,500 years ago. Writing itself is only about 5,000 years old. The entire period of ancient human existence, hundreds of thousands of years of Homo sapiens, and millions of years of earlier human relatives, predates writing entirely. We cannot use the written record to establish when kissing began any more than we can use it to establish when laughing began or when mothers first held their infants. The written record tells us when kissing entered recorded history. The biological and behavioral evidence tells us something much older. Let's talk about other primates, because comparative primatology is one of the most powerful tools we have for understanding the ancient roots of human behavior. Chimpanzees kiss. Not in exactly the way humans kiss. The anatomy is different. The lip eversion is absent. The neural context is probably different. But chimpanzees regularly engage in lip contact with each other in social contexts that are clearly affiliative rather than sexual, after conflicts, as greetings, during reconciliation following aggressive encounters. Bonobos, our other closest living relative, engage in lip and tongue contact with remarkable frequency and apparent enthusiasm, in contexts spanning both affiliative and sexual interaction. The presence of lip contact behavior in both chimpanzees and bonobos, the two species most closely related to humans, is important. It means that some form of affiliative lip contact behavior likely predates the human lineage, present in the common ancestor we share with both species approximately 6 to 7 million years ago. Human kissing, in this framework, is not an invention but an elaboration. The development, in a lineage with everted, highly innervated lips and a complex pair-bonding social system, of a behavior that was already present in a simpler form in our pre-human ancestors. Gorillas have been observed engaging in lip contact. Orangutans show similar behaviors in specific social contexts. The distribution of lip contact behaviors across the great ape family suggests a deep evolutionary origin, with the specific human form, the romantic kiss with its distinctive neurochemical profile and pair bond reinforcing function, representing a derived, elaborated version of something much older. Let's talk about premastication, because this is the least romantic dimension of the kissing origin story, and also possibly the most important. Premastication is the practice of pre-chewing food before transferring it to another individual, typically a mother to an infant who does not yet have the dentition or jaw strength to process certain foods independently. It is documented across a wide range of human cultures and in a significant proportion of traditional societies worldwide. It involves direct mouth-to-mouth food transfer, with inevitable lip contact. In ancient human populations, where the weaning transition involved introducing solid foods to infants who lacked the ability to process them independently, premastication was almost certainly a common caregiving behavior. Ethnographic evidence from traditional societies suggests it was a primary method of infant food supplementation across the period of transition from breast milk to solid food. Here is the connection to kissing. Premastication creates a systematic, repeated practice of mouth-to-mouth contact between specific individuals in a context deeply associated with care, bonding, and positive emotional response. Both parties enfease on deck. This interaction, the mother experiencing the neurochemical rewards of caregiving and the infant receiving food, warmth, and maternal contact simultaneously, are having their bonding systems activated during lip contact. Over evolutionary time, this repeated association between lip contact and bonding neurochemistry could have been one of the pathways through which the affiliative lip contact behavior of our primate ancestors developed into the specifically bonding-associated kiss of modern humans. This is not a fully proven evolutionary narrative, but it is consistent with what we know about the development of human pair bonding from primate precursors, and it is consistent with the cross-cultural association between kissing and parental, as well as romantic affection that appears in every culture where kissing is practiced. Let's talk about the cross-cultural distribution of kissing, because this is where the "when did it start" question gets complicated in an interesting way. For a long time, the prevailing view in anthropology was that romantic kissing was not universal, that it was practiced in some cultures but not others, and that its distribution reflected cultural diffusion from specific origin points rather than a universal human behavior. A widely cited 2015 study claimed that romantic kissing was present in only 46% of cultures sampled, suggesting it was not universal. This claim has been substantially challenged. The methodological critiques are important. The study relied heavily on ethnographic records that often failed to document private intimate behaviors, used a definition of kissing that excluded some forms of lip contact that most behavioral scientists would consider kissing, and sampled cultures in ways that may have introduced biases. Subsequent analyses with broader behavioral definitions and better sampling have found kissing present in significantly higher proportions of human cultures. But the more fundamental point is this. Even if kissing in some specific form is not universally practiced across all human cultures, affiliative lip contact in some form, parent to child, between bonded adults, as a greeting between trusted individuals, appears in virtually every studied human culture. The specific form varies. The underlying behavior of using lip contact to express and reinforce affective bonds appears to be universal. This universality is exactly what you would expect from a behavior with deep biological roots. One that reflects the evolutionary architecture of human social bonding, rather than a cultural practice that spread through historical contact. Cultural practices that spread through contact show uneven, historically traceable distributions. Behaviors rooted in universal human biology appear everywhere humans appear. Now let's think specifically about ancient humans. The people who lived before civilization, before writing, before any of the cultural frameworks that shaped later human expressions of intimacy. What does the behavioral evidence from ancient contexts actually tell us about kissing? Direct evidence is, predictably, sparse. Ancient humans did not leave written accounts of their intimate behaviors. The skeletal and archaeological record does not directly preserve kisses, but several lines of indirect evidence are informative. The pair bonding evidence we have discussed in the context of ancient reproduction, the skeletal dimorphism data, the burial evidence of paired individuals, the genetic evidence of sustained male investment in offspring, all implies that ancient humans maintained the kind of close, emotionally bonded pair relationships in which kissing functions as a bonding behavior. Where pair bonds exist, the behaviors that reinforce them, including physical affection, including lip contact, are expected to be present. Ancient burial evidence in some cases shows individuals buried in close physical proximity, sometimes face to face, sometimes in positions suggesting embracing. The interpretation of specific burial arrangements is always cautious, but the pattern of deliberate, intimate physical positioning in ancient burials suggests that ancient humans understood and valued physical closeness between bonded individuals in ways that extended beyond purely functional proximity. The neurochemical evidence is perhaps the most compelling indirect argument. The oxytocin system, the dopamine reward system, the serotonin system, all of the neurochemical machinery that makes kissing pleasurable and bonding reinforcing were fully present and functional in ancient human brains. They are ancient systems, evolutionarily conserved, operating in ancient humans exactly as they operate in modern humans. A behavior that activates this machinery as effectively as kissing does would have been as rewarding and as bonding reinforcing for ancient humans as it is for modern ones. The combination of the anatomy, everted, highly innervated lips, the neurochemistry, bonding and reward systems that respond to lip contact, the pair bonding social structure, in which lip contact as a bonding behavior would be adaptive, and the comparative evidence from other great apes showing that affiliative lip contact is a deep primate behavior, all point in the same direction. Ancient humans kissed, probably not in exactly the cultural forms that modern humans practice kissing, embedded in the specific romantic scripts and social meanings that differ across contemporary cultures. But, in the fundamental biological sense, using lip contact to express and reinforce affective bonds between specific individuals, ancient humans were doing something recognizable as kissing long before anyone had a word for it. Let's talk about what kissing tells us about ancient human emotional life more broadly, because this is the dimension I find most compelling. Kissing is not just a behavior, it is an expression of a specific quality of inner experience, the experience of affective attachment, of caring specifically and uniquely about a particular individual, of wanting to be close to and physically connected with someone you love. The behavior is the expression. The experience is the thing. Ancient humans had that experience. We know this not because we have direct access to their inner lives, but because the neural systems that generate it, the attachment system, the reward system, the social bonding system, are ancient systems, present and functional in the human lineage long before our species, producing the emotional experience of love and attachment in brains that were, in all relevant respects, identical to ours. Ancient humans fell in love. Ancient humans formed deep attachments to specific individuals that were qualitatively different from their relationships with others in their community. Ancient humans experienced the specific, urgent, attention-narrowing, chemically mediated state that we call being in love. Dopamine flooding, oxytocin spiking, the whole neurological carnival, because those systems are ancient and universal, and were doing exactly what they do now in every ancient brain that experienced a close, bonded relationship with a specific other person. And in that state, the state of deep attachment to a specific other, of wanting proximity and connection and physical closeness. The behavior of pressing lips together in an expression of that attachment is the most natural thing in the world. It activates the most sensitive sensory interface on the face. It generates a neurochemical response that deepens the very feeling it is expressing. It communicates in a channel that requires genuine physical vulnerability and closeness, something that words, which ancient humans had, cannot quite capture on their own. Ancient humans knew this, not in the neurochemical vocabulary we use to describe it, but in the direct experiential sense that all of their descendants have known it, in every culture and every era, since the human capacity for attachment and the human anatomy of the lips first came together in a species that was, in this as in everything else, unmistakably and completely human. There is a final thread worth pulling here, which is what the deep antiquity of kissing tells us about the nature of human intimacy itself. Modern culture often presents romantic and sexual behaviors as products of culture. Things that are constructed, shaped, varied, and potentially arbitrary, different versions of human connection that could have been otherwise. And there is genuine truth in this. The specific scripts, the specific meanings, the specific social contexts in which intimacy is expressed and valued vary enormously across cultures and history. But the underlying capacity, the ability to form deep, specific, neurochemically driven attachments to particular individuals. The pleasure of physical closeness with those individuals. The use of the body's most sensitive interfaces as channels for the communication of affective states that exceed verbal expression. That capacity is not a cultural construction. It is an ancient biological inheritance built into the architecture of the human body and brain over millions of years of evolutionary pressure in a lineage that survived through social bonding. Ancient humans did not invent kissing. They discovered it, the way every human being in every generation discovers it, in the moment when the architecture of their lips and the chemistry of their brain and the specific weight of their attachment to a specific other person all converge into something that needs no explanation and requires no cultural script to make sense of. They were sitting close together. Their faces were close. And then they were closer. Some things are just that simple. And some things are just that old.